Hello everybody, and welcome to today's edition of Daf Yomi. Today's Daf is Daf 9 on B of Shevuot. So let's dive straight in. Don't we derive the atonement of the goat of the new moon through a comparison to the goat of Yom Kippur, and we do not refute it by saying that the atonement of the goat of Yom Kippur is more extensive? That is not relevant. There, with regard to the goat of the new moon, the basic fact that it provides atonement is written in the verse, as Rav Yehuda explains above, and the comparison of the goat of Yom Kippur is merely revealing a matter, i.e. it teaches in what way its atonement is limited. But here, with regard to the goat of the festivals, the verse does not mention any details about atonement, so it is valid to say that we do not derive the entire matter from the comparison to the goat of Yom Kippur, as it provides a more extensive atonement. Rather, the atonement of the goat of the festivals is derived just as Rabbi Hama, son of Rabbi Chanina, says in explanation of the opinion of Rabbi Meir in 10a. The matter is derived from the fact that with regard to the goat of the festivals, see Numbers chapters 28 to 29, the verses that mention the goat could have simply stated a goat, but instead and a goat. Here too, the fact that the verse could have simply stated a goat, but instead states and a goat, indicates that the goat of the festival are juxtaposed with the goat of the new moon, which are mentioned at the beginning of that passage, and teaches that they all affect a similar atonement. Just as the goat of the new moon atone only for cases in which one did not have awareness, neither at the beginning nor at the end, so too the goat of the festivals atone for cases in which one did not have awareness neither at the beginning nor at the end. The dilemma was raised before the sages when Rabbi Yehuda says that the goat of the new moons and the festivals atone for cases in which one did not have awareness, neither at the beginning nor at the end. Does that statement apply only to a sin that will never eventually become known, e.g. where no one was present when the person became ritually impure, but with regard to a sin that will eventually become known? So what's the footnote? Shesofa Livada. An example of a case of this is where others witnesses enter into the temple while he was ritually impure, and they inform him of his transgression later. Especially the Rimegesh adds another example, where one entered the temple after walking on a particular road, and later it became known that there was a source of impurity located on that road that rendered him impure. It is considered to be like a case of one who has awareness of his sin at the end, and therefore only the goat whose blood presentation performed outside the sanctuary on Yom Kippur itself atone for it, or perhaps even with regard to a sin that will eventually become known. Right now, at least, before it becomes known, I can call it a sin of which only God is aware, and therefore the goat of the new moons and the festivals atone for it. The Gemara concludes, common here has allusion to this dilemma as is taught in a Braita, for in a case in which one did not have awareness, neither at the beginning nor at the end, and it is a sin that will eventually become known, the goat of the festivals and the goat of the new moons atone. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. The Mishnah teaches, Rabbi Shimon says, the goat of the festivals atone for a case in which one never had awareness of his transgression, but the goat of the new moon do not. Rather, the latter atone for a ritually pure person who unwittingly partook of ritually impure sacrificial foods. The Gemara elaborates. Rabbi Elazar says that Rabbi Shaya says, what is the reason of Rabbi Shimon? The verse states, and he gave it to you to bear the sin of the congregation, Leviticus 10:17, and this verse is written with regard to the goat of the new moon. The verse concerns the 8th day of the inauguration of the tabernacle, which according to tradition occurred on the new moon of Nisan. There were 3 goats on that occasion that were brought as sin offerings. The inauguration sin offering, the sin offering of Nachshon, the head of the tribe of Judah, and the sin offering for the new moon. The verse cited by the Gemara is referring to the goat sin offering for the new moon, which was entirely consumed upon the altar, and its capacity to atone is derived from the front plate. It sits, and there's a picture here, a modern replica of the front plate. The front plate of the high priest was a plate of gold on which the words "Holy to the Lord" Exodus 28:36 were engraved, and which was tied to the forehead of the high priest, adjacent to where his hairline began. It was one of the 8 priestly garments that made up the raiment of the high priest, and one of the 4 vestments that are called the golden vestments. The high priest would wear all 8 vestments year round, except during the part of the Yom Kippur service where he would wear only the 4 white garments that the priests all priests wore. The Torah states that by wearing the front plate on his forehead, Aaron shall bear the iniquity committed in the holy items that the children of Israel shall sanctify. In Exodus 28:38, the sages say that the front plate does not atone for all sins committed with the offerings in the temple service. Indeed, with regard to some offerings, the Torah states explicitly that those offerings are not accepted. Rather, they explain that this verse applies to specific cases of ritual impurity. The verbal analogy between the word sin in this verse and the word sin stated with regard to that front plate. The verse there states, "And it shall be on Aaron's forehead, and Aaron will bear the sin of the sacred offerings," in Exodus 28:38. The verbal analogy teaches as follows. It is stated here with regard to the goat of the new moon, sin, and it is stated there with regard to the front plate, sin. Just as there in the verse in Exodus, the atonement for a sin involved the ritual impurity of sacrificial meat. So what's the footnote there? Chumas Basar, the rich impurity of sacrificial meat. The atonement affords the acceptance of the meat of offerings that, despite being richly impure, were unwittingly placed upon the altar. The verbal analogy teaches that there is another case involving rich impure meat for which one receives atonement. The verbal analogy is so: let the goat of the new moon atone for itself, i.e. for cases that it normally atones for, and for that which the front plate normally atones for, and the practical difference would be in a case where the front plate was broken. The Gemara answers, the verse states with regard to the goat of the new moons, to bear the sin of the congregation, which indicates that it bears, i.e. atones for only one sin, but does not bear 2 sins. The Gemara suggests, but let the front plate atone for itself, i.e. for those cases that it normally atones for, and for that which the goat of the new moon normally atones for, and the practical difference will be in a case of the defiling of the temple or sacrificial foods that occurred between the goat offering of this new moon and that new moon that follows. The Gemara answers, the verse states with regard to the goat of the new moon, and he gave it to you to bear the sin of the congregation, which indicates that it bears, i.e. atones for that sin, but another does not hear that sin. When 2 matters are associated with the verbal analogy, it is assumed that the halachot of each matter should apply to the other. Rashi states another proof for the opinion that each atones for in a different case. It is stated here, with regard to the goat of the new moon, the sin of the congregation, which indicates that it atones for the sin of the congregation, but not for the sin involving sacred offerings. Eidah Lo Kedoshim. Rashi derives the use of the definite article in the congregation and the sacred offerings, to teach that the respective passages refer only to specific people in the congregation and to a sin involving specific sacred offerings. And there, with regard to the front plate, is written, and the sin of the sacred offerings, which indicates that it atones for the sin involving sacred offerings, but not for the sin of the congregation. The Gemara says, we found a source for Rabbi Shimon's opinion about the goat of the new moons, and they atone for a richly pure person who partook of richly impure sacrificial food. From where did they derive his opinion about the goats of the festivals? That they atone for cases of the defiling of the temple or sacrificial foods in which one did not have awareness, neither at the beginning nor at the end. The Gemara answers, is derived just as Rabbi Hama, son of Rabbi Chanina, says, in explanation of the opinion of Rabbi Meir in 10a, the fact that with regard to the goats of the festivals, the verses that mention the goats could have simply stated a goat, but instead states and the goat, teach that the goat of the festival effect an atonement similar to the goat of the new moon. That is mentioned at the beginning of that passage here too. The fact that the verse could have simply stated a goat, but instead states and a goat, teaches that the goat of the festivals effect atonement similar to that of the goat of the new moon, which is mentioned at the beginning of that passage. Thank you for listening and wish you all the best. Bye.